Chicago street organizations. Can they unite? Let's talk about it.
No money on that game back, man. They been said that shit for a long time, man. You feel me? And even if motherfuckers don't even get along with each other, people could be cordial. I ain't saying that motherfuckers gotta hang out and start going to each other blocks and shit like that. Motherfucking be cordial, bro. You know, motherfuckers stop killing each other, man. We need to start helping one another. You feel me? Like Atlanta and like motherfucking Cali, you got motherfucking gangs and Snoop coming together. You feel me? Chris and the Blood. So why the fuck the GDs and the BDs can't do it? Why the Vice Lords and the GDs can't do it? Why the Stones and the GDs can't do it? You feel me?
This conversation is about Chicago street organizations. Most people call them gangs. But here in Chicago, those of us that are dealing with a certain level of knowledge prefer to call them street organizations. Now, these street organizations have a long history in the city of Chicago. Date all the way back to my childhood. I was born in 1958. So you could say the entire time I've been in school, from kindergarten on up, Chicago has been a gang capital of America. And a lot of times people see the violence in Chicago and they want to know, is it possible to have unity amongst the gangs in Chicago? When it comes to the question of unity between street organizations, or from now on I'll say gangs so people will know what I'm talking about. But when it comes to the question of the unity amongst gangs, this is a question that people ask all the time, but many times people think it's far too simple. In Chicago, according to the Census Bureau, it's about 870,000 black people in Chicago. And let me tell you, when the Census Bureau comes to black people's door, they don't open the door and they don't answer any questions. So if they say it's 870,000, that means there's 1 million. Because there's a lot of births done at home births. There's a lot of people that do not have birth certificates, and there's a lot of people that come here from Alabama, Mississippi, and all the places to live, and they don't tell anybody they're here. So you got 1 million black people. In the population of Chicago, it's like 32% black, 28% Hispanic, and like 40-something% white. Now, a lot of people, when they see this gang violence, they just think it's black, but it's also Hispanic/Latino gangs here too, shooting and killing. So when you look at how huge the city of Chicago is and how many neighborhoods are here, to say can the gangs unite is simplifying matters quite a bit. I mean, even a gang leader in Chicago could not communicate with every person that says they are affiliated with that gang. That's how many gang members are in the city of Chicago. There's not one gang here could tell you how many people call themselves that particular gang, because nobody knows. Now, when you've had a situation that's been going on forever and ever, it's very hard to rectify that situation. What a lot of people don't understand about Chicago is that Chicago has always been a gangster city. Ever since the industrial age, ever since, the immigrants came into the city and moved to Chicago, Chicago has been a gangster city. And for the black people that's coming up in Chicago that wasn't allowed to have jobs and had to hustle on the streets, they had to go up against these Al Capone and Bugs Moran mobs. So, of course, the blacks in Chicago developed their own gang culture. Chicago is a gangster city. It's just what it is from the root. Okay? The Tommy gun is called the Chicago typewriter. People been getting sprayed down on the streets of Chicago since the roaring 20s. So this is not anything that's new like people might think. One reason it looks worse now is because everybody's got cell phones and cameras. But even when I was a child, when I was 9, 10 years old, people was getting shot down like crazy. It was still the same thing. Yeah, it was a lot of fighting on the lower level between the kids, but when you got to the higher level of the gang situations, it was always gunplay and it was always shooting. So when you get to this question of can the gangs unite, that's a very tricky question. Because in my opinion, the only way the gangs would be able to unite is they would have to have a bigger enemy that they felt was a threat to all of them. And some people would say, well, they do have a bigger enemy, the police. Well, the police are an enemy, but it's a sometimey enemy. And when you're on the streets, your constant enemy is the person that lives by you. This is why you go to the hospitals, you'll see Hispanics shot by Hispanics, blacks shot by blacks, and whites shot and stabbed by whites. Because people fight those that's by them. And when you're talking about people not being able to have jobs and being X'd out of the system, they're forced to go out and make a living illegally. And when you're running numbers, which was back in the day, or you got prostitutes, or you're selling drugs, or you're a car thief, or whatever you're doing, when you are doing crimes, you have to be your own police. You cannot call the police. So Chicago is a city that has developed a habit of not calling the police when it has to do with the streets. One reason Chicago has so much gang violence is because the police is corrupt and can't be trusted. And when you have a police that's in the community treating the people like they're a nation that's being occupied. We're like an occupied nation. The police are like a military patrol. They have no respect for us. So nobody's gonna think to call somebody they don't even like. Even if a crime happens to me, I've been treated so bad by so many white police. Why would I want to call a white police? Because in my mind, so many white police have been mean and cruel and unfair to me that why would I think that they're going to care about getting me any type of justice? So this problem we have with the police is creating a lot of this. The police are one of the main reasons people take the law into their own hand. Also, the police are the ones that's criminalizing people, locking people up for a bag of weed and this and that and this and that, and turning our youth into criminals. And when you go to the jail, They tell you the biggest gang in there is the police, is the sheriff. When a young black man in Chicago goes to jail or to prison, he's all by himself. So these gangs were formed to protect the community originally, and also for men to protect themselves in these jails and prisons. Now, one of the biggest obstacles that would stop gangs from totally unifying is their philosophies and teachings. All of these gangs in the city of Chicago have heads, have leaders they look up to. Whether it's David Barksdale, whether it's Larry Hoover, whether it's Jeff Fort, whether it's Willie Lloyd, whoever it may be, they have leaders. And these leaders did not agree, did not have the same doctrine, did not have the same ideology. So in other words, you have certain gangs, they are on the 5. You have other gangs, they are on the 6. What is allowed with gangs that are on the 6 in prison is not necessarily allowed with gangs that are on the 5. So this is one of the big obstacles that would stop gangs from totally uniting. Now, as you've seen in the clip in my introduction, a young rapper, Chiraq rapper, he wants unity. But you have to know that what he was talking about is unity between the recording artists that are in gangs. Now, this can be accomplished somewhat. And it is best that the recording artists in Chicago unify regardless of their gang. Because you cannot make money with the violence. It makes you so nobody will book you at the clubs. It also makes you so you can't do songs with different people because they're not in the same gang. And it's just not good for business. Just look at the history of hip hop. Miami was on top. They was doing the whole thing with Khaled and Ace Hood and all of the, Rick Ross and all them. Soon as there got to be a little beef going on, boom, it fell off. Atlanta. At one time, Atlanta was way on top. They was doing Welcome to the City, all Atlanta raps together. Then it got to be like beef, Ludacris and T.I. and all that, and boom, they took a little dive. They had to wait for the Migos and all of them to come back and for it to start building back that unity. New York was trying to work together, trying to do things, but it was 50 Cent, it was the Lox, it was G-Unit, it was Dipset, it was all these different groups. A lot of people didn't get along, and right still today, New York cannot get a good footing. Los Angeles was on top. Death Row. And it wasn't a situation between Biggie and the death of Tupac that hurt Los Angeles. It was the gang banging. It was the fact that Suge was a Blood, Snoop was a Crip. The Crips and Bloods started really beefing harder and harder and harder. Younger artists started coming up and they was going against each other. And it took all this time for Snoop and the Game and YG and these brothers to try to put it back together. So if you check Texas, don't let me forget Texas. Texas was riding dirty. They had the Cadillacs with the spokes sticking all the way out. They had the crazy sound systems in the back of the trunk with all the lights. And they was doing it big. But what happened? There started to be beef between this one and Mike Jones, between this one and that one, this one and that one. Where Texas at now? Fell all the way off. So this brother that you see in my intro, King Yella, what he is talking about is for the recording artists. Now, this is possible. It's very possible for the gang members from different gangs, from different street organizations that are recording music, I would advise them to stop banging and start working together. If they did start working together, it will calm some of the stuff down a little bit. But it can only be calmed down so much. You know, when I seen on the news that they had kidnapped the son of El Chapo, that one cartel had kidnapped him, then I said, oh, okay, next summer it's going to be even more gang violence. Because what a lot of people don't know is Chicago is a stronghold for heroin sales. And if you're selling heroin, you're selling it for one cartel. Now, when another cartel try to take over, that cartel also going to try to take over distribution. So you'll end up with one person selling for one cartel and another group of people selling for another cartel, and that will also create a lot of violence. You know, a lot of times people say, oh, man, well, if you say you're a God in the hood, why you can't stop the gang violence? Well, that's just a very ridiculous question, because even if I'm a God in the hood, God does not control fallen angels. Fallen angels are under a different leader. And the only way a black person or black people would be able to control gangs would be through force. You would have to actually almost become a gang yourself and go out there through force, through violence, to make everybody stop. That's just a fact. They would have to get down or lay down. And the police wouldn't let you do it. So the police wouldn't even allow anyone to go and force unity. And the idea that you're waiting for unity amongst a bunch of people that have a long history of death from the other side, that's a dream. I mean, people have lost brothers, sisters, kids, children, okay? And you run up and shoot a man's brother and his mama, and you're from a different gang, who believes that there's going to be peace? There ain't going to be no peace behind that, okay? Like, it's real murder going on. It's real negative things going on, okay? And within these black communities, there's a lot of poverty, and poverty causes you to steal, and you're going to steal from the person closest to you. Poverty also creates bad schools, bad education, bad parenting, because the parents have to break laws and they end up going to jail, so you don't have no one to raise the child. So you got a young teenager on the street that has no respect, has no dignity, doesn't know how to act. So he goes out there and he calls my little sister a bitch or a hoe and slaps her. So then the guns come out. This is what's really going on. A lot of these shootings in Chicago are based on simple disrespect, based on people that wasn't raised correctly, that didn't have parents there to raise them. And we talking about 1 million people here. We talking about, man, easily 300,000 gang members, easily. That's probably on the low side. That's with black and Hispanic. Whew, it's probably 400,000. It's probably 400,000. So you just can't just say, oh man, let's go have some unity. But we can start by getting the recording artists, all you BDs and GDs and Vice Lords and Four Corner Hustlers and Black P Stone that's doing music. You all should start working together, making the music, putting the city on, setting an example for the younger kids that they just don't have to gang bang all the time. Now, some people might know I'm in the music business, and I had a hip-hop group. It was 4 brothers, and they was from 4 different gangs. And they were from 4 different gangs, and they got along just great. But it was a lot of problems, because when we would go in each of their neighborhoods, if there was a problem within that neighborhood between 2 gangs, it put one of them in jeopardy. In other words, let's say one of them was a Blackstone, which he was. One of them was a Blackstone. And one of them was a Vice Lord. He was a traveler. And the travelers and the Stones had got into it in the neighborhood where the traveler lived. So when the guy in the rap group went around his buddy, his brother, the person he rapped with in his neighborhood, and people knew he was a Mo, people knew he was a Blackstone, he was in danger because of what happened that was bigger than the group. So a lot of times we would do shows and things like that, and their friends would come from all different gangs, and that would be one of the few times in Chicago you would have 4 or 5 different gangs at an event. On the albums, I would have, like, I got songs where I have a Blackstone on there, I got a GD on there, I got a BD on there, I got a Vice Lord on there, and I got a Four Corner Hustler, all on one song. So it can be done. But even though we did it, we were not big enough to reach to all these huge neighborhoods and get everybody in a city this big to buy into what we were doing. And I'm going to be honest, the radio's not helping much because the radio play bang, bang, shoot 'em up all day, and then at the commercial break say, Chicago, put the guns down. That's the strangest shit ever. But even though we don't have solutions to stop the gang violence, we do want it to stop. And there are people here that are marching and protesting and wishing that it could stop. But without some type of economical power, without economical power and without gutting the justice system and gutting the hiring practices in this city, then there's very little that you can do about people living the street life and having to do what they have to do on the streets to make a decent living. Because people say go get a job, but then is the job going to pay you what you need to pay $1,400 a month for rent, $800 a month for rent, $1,700 a month for rent? And people want to live nice. So if they got to go out and sell dope to live in a nice apartment that's $1,700 a month rather than live in a raggedy, roach-infested, tore-up apartment for $500 a month, they're going to go sell dope. They're going to sell dope to get that night car. They're going to sell dope. And when you go do that, then the guns got to be with you. You got to buy into the entire life. And then it becomes a battle for territory. Now, you can't sell over here. So, you'll have a line drawn. So I'm going to end this by, asking all you young brothers out there that are gangbanging to, stop just shooting recklessly all up and down the block, hitting kids, you're shooting people that ain't got nothing to do with the situation. Stop going committing crimes that you can't get away with because you're driving off or you're driving past cameras. The cameras is recording you everywhere. You're getting caught left and right. Stop throwing your life away. A lot of times you're throwing your life away for something that you don't necessarily have to. And you recording artists out there in Chiraq that's making your music. Put your business first. Don't let that gang life ruin your money. Because when you go to jail and go to prison, the gang is not going to be able to take care of everything you need to take care of for your family. That's up to you to do that. So work with other brothers and other sisters from different neighborhoods and from different gangs and make the music and represent the city right and bring the money into the city. Bring the money into the city. Don't just keep shooting each other and driving the money out of the city. Put your differences aside, at least so you can do your music. So that's why King Yellow at the beginning of this video make a lot of sense. You know, put your differences aside and make the music. You can't make no money as no entertainer with violence. Violence runs the money away. Nobody gonna book you if they think everybody gonna come shoot up the club. Ask Chief Keef why he ain't performing in Chicago, because of that bad reputation that got put on him. Okay? So they say, well, if he come here, it's gonna definitely be gang violence. Okay? So it doesn't pay for you to be known as the gang banger, shoot 'em up rapper. That don't pay no bills. On cheap.